What is up guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Tian, I'm a final year medical student, and in this video I want to show you how exactly I make my notes that are optimized to get me marks in my exams. Now, I'm in my final year now, so I passed quite a few exams and I'm not a top student. If you've been following me, you would know this. I'm repeating it myself. I'm not smart. I'm just not smart. This is why my stuff would probably be valuable to a lot of people, because even the most stupid person can copy me and do this. And honestly, this method I'm going to tell you today has helped me beyond my own imagination. So again, before we start, a few promises. Firstly, I'm going to make it extremely direct. It's going to be made to save you time. I'm not going to try to get you to watch like audience retention. Like this channel, I would never make money from it. So I will try to save you as much time as I can. And secondly, this method will work if you just follow it. It's very simple, but if you are not familiar with this, and once you heard this, you're gonna realize how much you've been missing out and how much freedom you've been missing out. You could have used all of those times to go out, to go to the mall, even just to sleep and waste it, and instead you've been studying. So it's going to be quick, and what I'm going to do is going to spend 10 minutes to explain the whole thing to you. Hopefully that will make sense to you. So a lot of you want to click off by then because you think you've got it. And then I'm going to spend another 10 to 15 minutes to show you exactly how I would approach making my notes based on something that I didn't like, based on some text that I got from the internet. So you know exactly how I do it. So if you want to, get the most out of this video, then keep watching and just literally copy me afterwards. So it's going to be very simple. So there are only 3 steps to this method, and I believe no one has actually talked about this on the internet. So step 1, make an exam manual. What do I mean by that? You can see on the screen, I said exam, the pen is not working, exam manual. So what is a manual? Think about where in your life you've came across manuals. When you buy like appliances, right? Like let's say you bought like a washing machine and it comes with a manual, and that manual tells you how to use the washing machine. What it doesn't tell you is that the history of that washing machine and how is it designed, and what are the components of that machine. It only tells you how to use it and some of the components, and the only reason it tells you about those components is because if the washing machine is broken, you need to know where things are in order to fix it. That's it. So what you should do for your exam should be the same. You should not focus on learning knowledge without an outcome. If you watched the video before last video, you would know, like if you agree with this, you would please keep watching. If you don't, then like there's no point. We don't agree with each other. You can dislike this video and click off. My idea is that in order to pass the exam, you have to study like this is the only goal. Like you have to tailor all your learning to pass the exam. This is step 1. I know you want to become a doctor, but step 1 is to pass the exam, and it's 2 very different things, passing exams and actually practicing medicine, right? So you have to just tailor everything for you to pass the exam first. So in here, we want to make an exam manual. So what are some of the characteristics of this exam manual? Number 1, you have to identify the learning points specifically for you to get marks. So only learning points to get marks. So all the other things, useless, right? Useless for you right now. Or it's good to attend placements and learn about stuff, but they're not for you to pass your exam. So don't try to learn everything and anything that you come across and try to become the consultant when you're only 20. So just try to do what's important for you. So how are you going to identify those? Well, you need to first figure out what is going to come up in your exam. For example, if you're in your clinical years, probably you should start doing questions and identify those learning points that way. But if you're in your pre-clinical years, you need to go to your university and figure out what is important from your university's perspective. Like you can learn about biomedical science, but there's so much. It's a whole degree on itself, right? You're not going to learn, you shouldn't learn everything about medical science. You should just learn what's in the slides based on your university lecture. And that's one of the mistakes I made in my first year, which literally made me got 12% in my first exam, and I had to repeat the first year. It was terrible. Right. So only do the learning points that get marks. And if you want to know more about this learning points thing, go to the video that's linked above right now. And someone, I think one of the people who viewed that commented a summary of what learning point means. And I think it's great. So you can go read out the comments. And if you don't agree, comment down below, and I'll probably be reading it. Now, what is another thing that you need to make sure when you're making an exam manual? It has to be detailed. And you have to understand it. So this is not just that you read something and you got it. This is, you have to make it into your own logic, okay? Your way of understanding, even if that understanding isn't completely 100% correct. Even if that knowledge isn't 100% correct, you just have to understand it well enough to the point that will get you the right mark, will help you to choose the right multiple choice questions. That's enough for you. You just have to understand it to the point where it gets you the mark, okay? Okay, you're gonna think, okay, this is probably immoral, but just hear me out. When you're in your GCSEs, when you're in your A-levels, how many of your GCSE biology content is 100% scientifically correct? They're not 100% scientifically correct, are they? Because you don't have to learn everything and all the exceptions, all the little details. You don't have to know them. You just have to know the basics for your level when you're 15, 16 years old, when you're doing your GCSEs. That's it. It's the same with you. You're not only a student in uni, you just need to know enough for you to pick the right answer in your exam. That's what's expected from you. You don't have to know everything. So you need to write things down, understand them in your own way, in your own logic. What do I mean by your own logic? Let's say I can say to you, I love eating noodles. Okay, that's just a sentence, right? You can say back to me, maybe you also love eating noodles, and you can say, noodles are my favorite food. Those two sentences are the same, right? They mean the same thing, but you're saying it based on how you like to say it, how your brain thinks, and that's actually important. So a lot of like people, including myself, like I used to like to find notes online, like other people made them. I like to use those notes. Exactly like in the UK, you would be familiar with like Academics and 0 to Final Medicine. So those notes are great, but there's a problem with it because you didn't write it. Even if you understand it, it's still not as good as if you wrote it in your own language. And you're not gonna think that's gonna make a difference, but when you pile up years of learning, when you have like thousands of learning points to go through, it's even worse if you use mixed resources, right? One is that your brain, it has to process different ways of thinking and you have to mash them up together. And the second, if you made everything yourself in the right time, then when you go through them again, it's gonna feel like just so smooth. It's gonna feel like sailing on smooth water. So it actually makes a difference if you write your own notes, make them detailed. And one little tip, final thing, is they should be conversational. And I'm a strong believer in teaching is the best way of learning. So when you're writing those notes, when you're writing that exam manual for yourself, you want to feel like you're telling yourself, you're explaining this to a dumber version of you. Like you read something, right? You just got it, you understood it. You're like, oh, I got it. Now I'm going to write notes now. So I want you to write those notes as if you're explaining it to you 5 minutes ago, the you that didn't know anything about it. So it's going to be conversational, it's going to be relaxed, chill, it's going to read exactly like how you like to think it, and it only contains learning points that will get you marks. Imagine that note, how valuable that note is to you because you wrote it, right? How much more valuable it is for your exam to read those notes than finding some random notes that's not produced by even your university and try to learn it and then try to match up to what your uni is going to test you. This is why you're not been getting good marks, right? That's step one. Step two, words connected by arrows. So once you have those notes, once you have these ones, you're going to make a new paragraph where you only put the keywords of that big paragraph in. Like for example, there are 3 keywords, and then you connect them in arrows. So I want you to arrange your notes in a way that everything is linked to everything. So if you remember one thing, your brain automatically remembers the second and third thing. And you can build this up. So over time, this thing keeps going, right? Over time, if you remember the first thing, you automatically remember 6 things. And this is actually how our brain works. This is called like just natural association. And our brain actually works like I don't know if you've seen the movie where like this guy goes, oh, here's a challenge, try not to think about elephants. And then he goes, so what are you thinking about now? Elephants, right? Sometimes our brain does this association thing without even our control. So we need to take advantage of that. So you're gonna have that, and then you're gonna have words that represents that big paragraph, and then you want everything to connect with everything. So in the exam, you're stressed. You remember one thing, for example, here, automatically your brain just like spreads out. That sounds so weird, but you just remember these 2 that's before it and these 3 that's after it. And if you want, I'll show you exactly how I could achieve that in a second. Step 2, finished. Step 3, remember your codes. So this is what I call your codes, right? So you need to just remember them. But it's so simple because now you just have to remember, let's say, 6 words. That's going to represent 60 words or even 6 paragraphs of content. And then even as you repeat them again and again, you only need to remember the first word. So what's now? You're remembering 1 word and you're going to remember 6 paragraphs of content. And this is why those like top 1% of students, I don't think I'm one of them, but I know because I've talked to them, like the best students, what they do like the day before the exam, they probably just have like 1 sheet of A4 paper and they look through it and they go, okay, I've revised everything in this whole school year. And you're like, there is no way you fit all the information in that 1 piece of paper. But this is how, right? They're only looking at 1 word, but in their brain, it's generating so many things that you can't see. But this is why they're doing so much better than you. And that's it. That's the 3 steps, how I make notes that are optimized for getting marks. If that made perfect sense for you, feel free to click off. I'm glad I saved you time. But if you want to get the most out of this video, I'm going to show you exactly how. And we're going to slow down the pace now. I've been like so hyper to talk about this now. We're going to slow down and we're going to work together, okay? So I have an insert here. I got this from the internet somewhere. I'm not going to tell you which textbook it is, but I didn't write this. And I'm going to teach you stroke. And this is the interesting bit. Even if you're not a medical student and you're watching this, you're like a student in school or something, even you are going to understand this very high level knowledge. This is like a final year content, right? Stroke. And even you're going to understand it because I'm going to make it so easy to understand. And then I'm going to simplify it and make it easy to remember. And this is going to be slow, so bear with me, okay? So let's first read this together. If you know what stroke is, perfect. If you're in med school, you probably know what stroke is. And we're just talking about 1 type of stroke, which is called ischemic stroke. And let's just read this together and see how difficult it is to understand something that I didn't write myself. Okay, so what is stroke or ischemic stroke? Ischemic stroke is a sudden onset focal neurological dysfunction that can be attributed to a vascular cause. I think that's a broad definition for strokes. And ischemic stroke refers to an acute onset neurological deficit due to infarction of the central nervous system. Depending on the affected area, symptoms include motor and sensory deficits, visual defects, and higher cerebral dysfunction such as aphasia and neglect. I know you want to skip ahead. I want to skip ahead too, but if we read this together just once, like try to pick up the things you can't understand, and the things you can't will make it easier right now, okay? Different diagnoses include hemorrhagic stroke, transient ischemic attack, seizures, migraine, space occupying lesions. The key in initial investigation is a non-contrast CT scan to rule out hemorrhage. Management of ischemic stroke involves thrombolysis in selected patients, usually within 4.5 hours of symptom onset, provided there are no contraindications, with mechanical thrombectomy for eligible patients. Antiplatelet medication should be initiated and follow-up including rehabilitation, investigations for an underlying cause, and optimization of risk factors. So I didn't write that. So what was our step 1? Writing an exam manual, something that we can use that we understand. Obviously, this is still not going to be your exam manual because I'm still going to write it in my thought process, but I'm going to think out loud in this video so you get the point, and you can copy me and do it yourself as well. Okay, so I'm reading the first line, a sudden onset focal neurological dysfunction that can be attributed to a vascular cause. Fine, that's a definition. I'm gonna leave it there because it's not particularly useful. I can't really think of a way the examiner can ask me that because they don't really make me write a definition anymore. Right, second paragraph. An ischemic stroke refers to an acute onset neurological deficit. So what is a neurological deficit? So that word to me is quite difficult. So I'm just gonna say ischemic stroke is what refers to. I don't like the fact that it's using refers to, right? It just is an acute onset. I don't need the word onset. I know what acute means. Acute means just it happens in an emergency or it happens within a short period of time. It's an acute neurological, means it's to do with the nervous system. So I'm comfortable with the word neurological. Acute neurological problem due to infarction of the central nervous system. What is an infarction? So here, maybe I don't really understand what infarction is, but if I do, then I'll probably, like if I don't, I'll search it up, but I'll make it simple. So it's acute neurological problem caused by loss of oxygen / blood in the nervous system. So central nervous system, if you like, I know what that means. It means the brain and the spinal cord. Let's just write that actually, in the brain and the spinal cord. Okay, depending on the affected area, I'm reading it again and keep reading. Symptoms include motor and sensory deficits. So I would, if it's conversational, I'll say can have motor and sensory problems, vision problems, and higher cerebral dysfunction. So here, in reality, I would actually go to ChatGPT, or I have like split screen with like either ChatGPT or Microsoft Copilot on the side. So what is higher cerebral dysfunction? But here it says such as aphasia and neglect. So I'm thinking, if I see this exam, I need to be able to recognize it. So if there's a patient or the patient case, the patient has aphasia and neglect, then I'm thinking this could be an ischemic stroke. So I'm going to add this aphasia and neglect to my list of problems. And I don't know what aphasia means. So aphasia, I will search it up and I realize aphasia is can't speak, right? So visual problems and speech problems, bracket, can't speak, also called aphasia, and neglect. And here again, I will search up what neglect actually means, and I will understand it in my own way. So neglect is quite hard to explain. Basically, when you have neglect, it's a neurological a symptom where the patient can see, technically they can see based on physical, their physical body is working, but when you do some tests on them, they're not processing the information in front of them. Like I have a mic in front of me and my eyes and everything works, but like if a doctor asks me, what do you see in front of me? I'll say everything except the mic. Like I just can't see it in a way. My brain's not accepting it. And that's probably a simple but not accurate way to describe it. So I'm just going to leave it as it is here, neglect. Okay, let's move on. So look, already I made it literally from 4 lines to 2 lines because I think those 2 lines are the things that are irrelevant for my exam as a student on my level, right? And everything, all the words in these 2 lines are really simple words that even you can understand. Even if you're not a medic, you can understand what they mean. Moving on, differential diagnoses include hemorrhagic stroke, transient ischemic attack, seizures, migraines, and space-occupying lesions. So, similar or like other possible diseases. This is what differential diagnosis mean. So I will search what is differential diagnosis. Differential diagnosis in medicine basically means if you see a presentation, see a patient who comes in, you want to have a few working differential diagnoses, meaning they could be having A disease, they could be having B, they could be having C diseases based on the initial presentation of them. And then I'm going to ask them more questions, do more tests, do some physical examinations, do some imaging to rule out B and C. So I have A. So I think they're A. So I diagnose them as A disease. So differential diagnosis is like one step before. So other possible diseases that can present as ischemic. Remember, we're okay with having more words. We're okay with being extremely detailed. This bit is all about making sure you understand it in the most simple and most comfortable way, right? So other possible diseases can present similar to an ischemic stroke. Other strokes, such as bleeding type, because hemorrhagic stroke, if I search it up, I'll find out there's a different type of stroke where your brain actually bleeds. Transient ischemic attack, if I search it, I realize this is like a mini stroke. So I can bleeding type, mini stroke, seizures, migraines, which is a type of headache, So I'll literally write that in. And space occupying lesions. What's that? I'll have to search it up and realize basically that just means cancer tumor, right? And so I'm just gonna say tumors, because this is what I'm more comfortable with than space occupying lesions. Moving on, the key initial investigation is a non-contrast CT scan to rule out hemorrhage. So here, maybe I don't know what CT scan is. Maybe I don't know why you want to do a non-contrast CT scan. So I would go to ChatGPT or whatever, and I would search up, like I would literally have a full-on conversation. Why are these patients with ischemic strokes having non-contrast CT scan? And I'll figure out why. So CT scan is a scan that basically cuts your body into little layers of like Pringles, and you can scroll on the computer to see each layer, to see what's happening with the blood vessels, the tissues. And why non-contrast? So what is non-contrast? So I will search it up and realize, if you put contrast, which is a type of dye you inject into your blood, and when you do that scan and it shows up on your computer, all the blood vessels will light up because you put like some chemicals in it, and then you do an imaging, it will light up. But I don't want that. I don't want them to light up. Why? Because if I do put a contrast CT scan, it would really help, it would really disturb my image, and I wouldn't be able to pick up an hemorrhage easily. So basically, I want to see how I'm trying to be conversational. I want to do a non-contrast CT scan to make sure there's no hemorrhage, because it's easier to pick one up if there is. So that's basically, I'm telling myself why, and I'm saying it in the most simple way possible. Moving on, management of ischemic stroke involves thrombolysis in selected patients. So to treat, I will do thrombolysis. So what is thrombolysis? I wouldn't know this now, so I have to search up on the internet. What is thrombolysis? And I realized, it's just like to give a specific type of medication to break down a clot. So the ischemic strokes is caused by having a clot in one of your blood vessels that stops the oxygen and blood delivery. So I need to give a medication to break down that clot, and this is just thrombolysis. So the thrombolysis, give medication to break down blood clot. This is what it is. In selected patients. So what are those selected patients? It says within 4.5 hours of symptom onset, provided there are no contraindications. So basically, the selected patients need to have two criteria met. One, they came in within 4.5 hours. Two, there are no contraindications. So in patients who came in within 4.5 hours and have no, what's contraindication? So I'll find out, have no things that make the thrombolysis dangerous. Okay, so in these patients, they can have a medication that break down that clot in the brain. And I hope you're following. With mechanical thrombectomy for eligible, so some can even have, what is that? And I realize it's just a surgical procedure. So you give medication. If that doesn't work, you can try a surgical option. So some can even have a surgical option called mechanical. And sometimes if you don't really understand something, or you feel like, I feel like I just need to remember this word and I don't want to dig into it, so you can just say, oh, there's something called mechanical thrombectomy, and you can say, just remember it. Okay, so as you can see, this is, if you think this is medical device, please click off. This is so dangerous. This is not medical device. I'm teaching how to pass exams. Finally, antiplatelet medication should be initiated and followed up, including rehabilitation, investigation for underlying cause of. So look at this fancy sentence, right? So I'll just say, afterwards, I will give antiplatelet medications, which is a type of medication that I need, right? And follow up includes rehabilitation. I'll just write rehabilitation. Investigation for underlying causes. So I don't think the last bit can be tested in exams, so I'm just going to leave it, and I understand it perfectly. So now this fancy paragraph has been transformed into something that I read as so comfortable. Like if you let's read it again really quickly. Ischemic stroke is an acute neurological problem caused by loss of oxygen or blood in the brain and the spinal cord by a blood clot. Is that? Can have motor sensory problems, vision problems, speech problems, bracket can't speak, and called aphasia, and visual neglect. And we're neglecting the concept of neglect in this video because I feel like it's a bit too complex. Other possible diseases can present similar to an ischemic stroke. Other stroke types like bleeding type, mini strokes, seizures, migraines, which is a type of headache, and tumors. So with ischemic stroke, what I want to do is a non-contrast CT scan, which is a type of scan, to make sure that there's no bleeding. There's no bleeding, because it's easier to pick up one if there is. Okay, to treat it, I will do thrombolysis, which is a type of procedure to give medication to break down the blood clot in patients who came in within 4.5 hours and have no things that make this procedure dangerous. Some can even have a surgical option called mechanical thrombectomy, and I just want to remember that option because as a junior doctor, probably I won't be involved in this, but I don't know. Afterwards, I will give antiplatelet medications to follow up, and that includes rehabilitation as well. So this is your exam manual. This is step 1 finish. Step 2 and 3 are going to cover 5 minutes. So what's step 2? Keywords and arrows. So let's turn this into a bunch of keywords with arrows that connect everything together. So let's read the first one. Ischemic stroke is acute neurological problem. So ischemic, this is definitely a keyword because this is literally what this is about, right? Is acute nerve issue and caused by loss of blood and oxygen. So I'm going to say this is one arrow because it's caused by no blood or oxygen in CNS, brain and spinal cord, because there's a blood clot. Okay, look at that. They can have motor sensory problems, so immediately I'm thinking, maybe it just reads better if I reverse this. By the way, I'm fully doing this the first time. I haven't prepared how I'm going to present this, but I just want to show you authentically how I would do it in real life, right? So I would do it the other way around. Blood clot causing no blood oxygen in CNS or like brain and head. You can say brain and spine, leading to acute nerve issue called ischemic stroke. This stroke can have a motor sensory problem and lead to motor sensory issues such as vision, speech, and neglect. Okay, vision, speech, and do you remember aphasia? This is a key word because we don't know what that is. We searched it up. It's like a medical word. Other causes, so other possibilities. And look, this is not making too much sense, but it makes sense to us, right? Because we have the big paragraph above, so we know what this context is. Other possibilities include bleeding type stroke, mini stroke, seizures, migraines, tumors. And here, like, if it's like a year 1, year 2 exam and you understand what your uni is about, for example, my uni, they might ask this as in like, give me 4 other differential diagnoses of ischemic stroke. So in that case, I will just choose and remember the 4 easiest ones. And if I want to, let's say, remember a whole list of words, this is what I'll do, right? Put a list into ChatGPT and ask it to make a mnemonic. So that's a tip for you, you can use. And they make some really funny ones sometimes. And then you just copy paste a mnemonic and you can remember a list. Okay, moving on. To treat, right? Sorry, I want to do a non-contrast CT scan. So here, I can put this here. So I have a ischemic stroke, it can cause your issues. Do non-contrast CT. And then I understand right now, so I'm not going to add the rest. I'm only adding the keywords. To treat, I'll do a thrombolysis. So this is after the CT scan, right? So you do a CT scan, you know this patient has ischemic stroke, and then you're going to do your thrombolysis. Then you're going to say, I'm going to do thrombolysis. And that's it. That's all I'm going to write here. Because if I forgot what this is, I'll just go up. Oh yeah, that was what thrombolysis was. And chances are, after you've written once like that, like we've talked about it like that, you already won't ever forget what thrombolysis is. It's just to put a medication to break down the clot. That's it. So you do thrombolysis and do non-contrast CT, do thrombolysis within, so I'm going to say within 4.5 hours and safe. Right? That what I mean, what that means. And step up is mechanical. Come back to me. Do you think I can get it? Okay. Thrown back to me. Done. And afterwards, I'll give platelets and medication to follow up. So afterwards, follow-up is antiplatelet and rehab. Okay, finished. Other possibilities is a different thing. So, much shorter now, right? And the most important thing is, I've arranged it in a way that everything is connecting to everything. You know the person, like, there's always one guy who knows everyone. Yeah, so you want your notes to feel like that. So, now, I read this again and again, to the point where the day before the exam, obviously you have other learning points, right? You're going to have ischemic stroke. And the magical thing is, once you start yourself here, let's say blood clot leads to no blood oxygen in the brain, and then your brain will just complete the rest of it for you because everything already has a connection. Like your memory works in a way that it has already connected with each other. So you're going to revise. When you revise, you go blood clot, okay, in the brain, so no blood or oxygen. So that's called an ischemic stroke. And within ischemic stroke, I want to do non-contrast CT scan because it's easier and I can pick up a hemorrhage. And if I do pick up a hemorrhage, I want to do something called a thrombolysis, where basically I just give medication to break down the clot. And the patient has to come in less than 4.5 hours, and then they also have to be safe. There's no contraindications, right? And afterwards, I do antiplatelets and rehab. This is what's going to happen because in your brain, once you say one word, it automatically in your brain shows up an arrow, the next word. But you have to repeat that for a few times. And here, other possibilities, hopefully you put that into ChatGPT, is going to give you a stupid mnemonic, and you're just going to say other possibilities equals that stupid mnemonic. And if you really want to dive into an exam, you can think back to what that mnemonic was, and it all makes sense, the different possibilities. Remember this list of words. That's it. That's the 3 steps. And I know this has taken a while, but you see how I did it? Now go and try and do it. Like, this is your actionable step, right? I don't want you to just watch something, go to bed. Actually get up, find a paragraph in the textbook or lecture slide, try to turn it into, like, firstly, expand it, make it very detailed and understandable for you, and then simplify it, find out the keywords and connect the keywords, and lastly, read it, make sure it makes sense, read it again the next day, and just see how magical this method is. And can you imagine, before the exam, you will have one piece of paper with like a few keywords, and each one of those keywords will generate, if you see it, if like it's like clicking on it, but if your eyes see that word, your brain will automatically generate paragraphs and paragraphs of notes. That's how they do it. So I'm only telling this to you because I realized it very late. I'm already in my last year, I'm nearly graduating. But if you're early on in the journey, you can use this right now, and you would have done way better than I did when I was at your stage. And that's it for today. Thank you for watching. If you found it useful, please leave a comment and like, and let me know your thoughts. Also, give me some ideas. What kind of things, what kind of content do you want to watch on this channel? And I will see you in the next one.